Hey, good evening. Call the meeting to order at 7 p.m. Has the board had a chance to review our minutes?
I have, and I move to accept as printed.
Second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
They are approved. Department heads and committees, we have John Charbonneau, our Director of Planning and Development. John, thanks for coming in tonight.
Thank you. I have a couple things to bring forward before the Selectmen tonight. One is a grant application I'm working on, and part of the grant application process is receiving signatures from the Board of Selectmen and also the Town Administrator expressing support for the application. So I'd like to present this to the Board.
Sure, great. Do we have a motion in support of that?
Yes. So moved.
Second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
That's approved. We'll get that back to you, John. Thank
Great,
you.
thank you. The other reason I'm here tonight is I'm requesting that the Board of Selectmen vote to refer a zoning bylaw amendment back to the Planning Board for a public hearing, as is required by Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 5, whenever a zoning bylaw is prepared. My apologies for doing this a little bit out of order because of the tight time frame and wanting to get this on the fall town meeting warrant. Normally, I would come before the Selectmen before the public hearing was scheduled. However, the Planning Board had no choice but to vote at its last meeting to schedule their public hearing on October 17th to be able to get it in the newspaper for the proper legal advertising to meet the Attorney General's requirements. So what you have before you is a draft zoning bylaw amendment to regulate the establishment of medical marijuana treatment centers. As you all know, we currently have a moratorium in place, but it's set to expire on November 20th, so it's imperative that we get something on for this town meeting. So I'm simply here to request a vote to refer that for a public hearing at the Planning Board meeting on October 17th.
Any questions for John?
Yes, I do. Could you elaborate a little bit, John, on where the board is recommending the marijuana clinic be located?
Certainly.
As per the amendment that you're proposing?
Yeah, the Planning Board is proposing that this be added as a special permit, a use allowed by special permit only in the current industrial zoning district in the northwest area of town. This started by sitting down with relevant department heads who would be affected most by this, namely the Board of Health Director and the Police Chief. And the reason that this was originally proposed this way is this is consistent with what other towns have been doing. They've been adding it as a special permitted use in their industrial zoning district. So that was the start. It got support at that level, and then I brought it before the Planning Board, and they concurred, and that's why this is what the Planning Board is proposing to the Selectmen.
May I, Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman?
Mr. Chairman.
I have several concerns about the location which the Planning Board is recommending with regard to the industrial zone in the northwest part of Raynham. Essentially, the area that the Planning Board is talking about is the area north of the Gap, or the restaurant there, and to the proposed casino. So effectively, if this were approved by the state, this marijuana clinic would be located within hundreds of yards of the proposed casino, and I think that this is problematic right out of the gate. And I say that for the following reason, because the whole area of marijuana clinics is so very, very new, and one which is going to be administered by the state, or I should say the Commonwealth, with all the bureaucracy that goes with it. So it's fair to say, and most people have said, that there'll be some real growing pains when these clinics are set up. And with those growing pains, there's likely to be abuses. There's likely to be a learning curve associated with the state or the Commonwealth getting this organized to the point where it's well administered. In the meantime, if it were approved, it would be very close to the proposed casino. I think that that's an unfortunate thing. We, as a board and as the town, have worked very hard to put in place an attractive place for people to come to visit town, and to have a marijuana distributor virtually next door, it does not seem to me to be a fitting place to put it. Moreover, it is a clinic, and I would think the logic would say that such a facility would be better placed closer to a hospital such as Morton Hospital. And of course, the Route 44 corridor certainly would amend it, would be agreeable to having a business such as this. And keeping in mind, the industrial zone is an industrial zone, and we're talking about a business, and those are not exactly apples and apples. And I think that the fact that the planning board is recommending an area that is rather remote, certainly from law enforcement, I just don't think it's a convenient place, and that I would urge the residents to consider that this would, I think, be a bad choice for the town as a whole. I know that the planning board, in their efforts, have chosen this area, as I understand it, because it's not as attractive to a potential distributor, and therefore would be, presumably less likely to be approved by the state, and that's one of the hopes, and I understand that. But I think they give too much credit to the state with regard to how much they would, how far they would dig into this, how many levels down. So again, I don't think it's a good recommendation, and I hope the town sees it that way. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Schreiber. Mr. Smith?
Well, I think we have a big problem, though. Where else would we put it?
That's the question.
I mean, we certainly don't want it within the confines of in between 138 or 44, because that's all residential, close, there's schools, there's churches, there's so many things in between. Route 44 is jam-packed right now. You certainly don't want it next to a Dunkin' Donuts or a coffee shop. So what choice do we have?
Well, to say that Route 44 is jammed and there's no space, I think that could stand a little bit more vetting. It's the logical place. It's where businesses that are retail in nature. It's where the hospital facility is. I would argue that it deserves more attention. You may be right,
Yeah.
but I don't think it's been vetted completely, and I would argue that we should vet that a little bit more carefully before we pick a place that's so close to the proposed casino. And by the way, I, along with my colleagues, happen to feel very strongly that this town has a better than a good chance of getting that casino. We've put forth an excellent plan. We have great community support. So I'm going on the basis that that casino is coming to Raynham, and it's that causes me to be concerned about this proposal. But I understand your point.
The difficult part of this is, the difficult part of this specific bylaw and where the town chooses to allow this to be permitted is the fact that there is no perfect area. There is no perfect location.
Right.
There are pros and cons to wherever you may put it, and that's what the town needs to decide. Both, along Route 44 and this area both have equal access to highway, Route 24 and Route 495. They both have pros and cons. So there is no perfect choice. The town needs to decide where it feels most comfortable permitting these. And the thing to remember is that this would be a special permitted use, which means it's not allowed by right, which means that any proposed facility would have to hold a public hearing before the planning board, which means that there would be advertisements in the paper. The public could feel free to come and weigh in. And the special permit process not only allows the planning board to impose conditions of approval for any potential mitigation or potential issues, but it also allows the planning board to hire an independent consultant to work on its behalf at the cost of the applicant to thoroughly review the project during the public hearing process. So it's much different than if something is allowed by right. It's a special permit, which means, again, a public hearing, and those other aspects of it, which means abutters would be notified of the public hearing and by certified mail. And I just, the Board of Health Director shared something with me today that it was just released that before any applicants for a medical marijuana treatment center come for this second phase of permitting to the state, they have to get local support from the town they want to locate in. So that was news I just found out about an hour and a half ago, where it's not a situation apparently where they will go to the state and fully get permitted by the state and then come to the town. They go through their phase one, then when they're ready for phase two, they have to come to the town and get local support before they complete their state application. So there are measures in place
So in other words, when they come to a public hearing, if the town rejects it at that public hearing, is that enough to be able to say, no, they cannot come here?
Potentially, because naturally, special permits are governed by the special permit process, and the criteria for special permits are somewhat, there are certain criteria they have to meet for special permits. They have to prove that they're not going to have negative impacts on certain elements of the community. And if they don't prove that, then yes, the planning board can deny their special permit request.
Okay.
But there's naturally, the applicant or somebody else can always appeal. That's always an option.
Right. You keep saying medical marijuana clinic.
I didn't say clinic, it's medical marijuana treatment center.
Okay, a treatment center. I was led to believe that this was a place to purchase for medical reasons marijuana.
And the fact is, nobody really knows what type of facility may come to their town. The definition of medical marijuana treatment center, if I can read, according to the state, is a not-for-profit entity registered under 105 CMR 725.1 that could acquire, cultivate, possess, process, including the development of related products such as edible MIPs, tinctures, aerosols, oils or ointments, transferring, transporting, selling, distribute. It could be one or many of these things. So it's difficult to pinpoint exactly what type of facility a town may see an application for.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It could be one of these things. It could be a combination of these things. And I think that's why communities are putting this in their industrial district,
right,
because you may get a facility that looks for warehousing of some kind for the storage of this. And believe me, the DPH regulations are very thorough in terms of the storage and security of all of this. So the DPH regulations are stricter than anything communities can come up with. So their process and the expense that an applicant's going to have to go through before they even come to the town is quite significant. So I think that's the reason towns are choosing industrial districts, is because we don't know. You could get a smaller facility, you could get a larger facility that does do manufacturing and processing. And is that something you really want in a business type of zoning district?
Let me jump in, please.
Yes.
I got the point. When you compare us to other towns who have recommended industrial zones, let's be clear that we are not like other towns insofar as our proposal for a slot casino. So when we compare ourselves to other towns in that regard, in terms of the industrial zoning, we're talking apples and oranges here. We have a slot casino that's in play with our proposal, and I think that puts this in an entirely different light than what other communities may or may not be doing. By the way, two things. Mm-hmm. First of all, in one of the newspapers today, I think it was the Herald, there was a picture, a very clear picture, on one of the proposals, which are vending machines for marijuana. And I don't know if anybody else has seen that, but vending machines. So these are clearly a place for distribution of marijuana.
It can be, yes.
That's in the Herald today. The other thing I want to say is this, and we'll close it at this because I think we've covered this. When you say there's no perfect answer, and I certainly agree with that, mm-hmm, I'm going to say that some answers are less perfect than others, okay? And I'm going to say that this amendment that the planning board was proffered is not taking the best first step in this process, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, both of you. I think the only comments I'll add, because I think both of you covered a lot of the substance of it, is the unfortunate thing that we're forced to discuss this, and I think no matter which side you come down on it, the legislative process isn't perfect, but I think in some instances like this, it's better than the public option, and that's how we got to where we were. This was a public referendum initiative, and it passed by the voters in Massachusetts, which forced upon us and upon the state measures that, quite frankly, none of us were prepared to handle. And that's why DPH continues to scramble and find ways to implement this. There's another issue that's out there that none of us are talking about because it's outside of our purview, but it's that these laws are in direct contradiction to federal law and drug trafficking and drug distribution, and it's being challenged in Colorado right now. You're going directly against federal criminal statutes And so the legality, not just in Massachusetts, but in all the states that this is already happening, is being called into question because it's going against the Drug Act at the federal level. So that's another layer that we all have to consider as well. And whether or not that's going to continue to, move forward at the federal level or not, because there's people of the belief that the states don't have the ability to supersede federal jurisdiction, and that's really, I think, what this amounts to, so.
And the difficult thing, Joe, and Rich, you mentioned this, it's difficult for any of us to say what the likelihood of one of these facilities coming to Raynham is. I mean, the DPH has stipulated that there should be a minimum of one in each county, but no more than 5. Bristol County has 20 communities with 4 cities. So it's tough to put a percentage on what the chances would be. From what I understand, Bristol County has 9 applicants that have been approved by the DPH, and I think it's either 4 or 5, approximately half of those have duly applied in another county. So does that mean if they get permitted in another county, then they're not going to come to Bristol County? So there are a lot of uncertainties here, and so you're absolutely right, Joe. And I had someone comment to me the other day that, if one of these facilities, one of these developers wants to get financing from a bank, how willing are the banks going to be to go against federal law and give financing to one of these facilities? So there are a lot of things that may end up being self-regulating to this as well. So there's a lot of questions still out there.
Any other questions? Anything from the public? Yeah, Masha. Do you mind just coming up, though?
This may not be directed to your board or not. I was just wondering if there any of the other areas in town are zoned industrial that's been considered. Do you know? And I know this may not be directed to you. I live in North Raynham, and we also didn't think that we would ever get 2 Walmarts, and now there is another one in North Raynham. So that was just my comment.
Yeah, we considered briefly the light industrial area over on the east side of Raynham. However, the Mass DPH has a default setback from churches and schools of 500 feet. And we figured with the close proximity of residential zoning districts to that light industrial and how narrow that zoning district actually is, that it would be a very difficult thing to get approved by the Attorney General, because they may look at our setbacks and how narrow that zoning district is and say, well, look at all the residential areas, it's really not going to be able to go anywhere here. So that's another aspect of this is, some towns tried to get tricky when this first came out and actually outright banned these facilities, and the Attorney General came back and said, no, you can't do that. So it's something that towns are forced to, that we have to deal with. We don't have a choice but to deal with it. So we did look at that type of area for that.
If it isn't passed at town meeting, what happens then?
That's a good question. We have a moratorium that expires on November 20th.
Then they'd be allowed to come if they chose to and met the requirements.
That would be a good question for town council is what happens, yeah.
My interpretation would be if we didn't have specific restrictions like a lot of other things, then if they met all the other requirements, they could basically pick wherever they wanted to go. The idea behind these types of additional restrictions is to direct it, like we've done in the past with the Adult Entertainment District. We picked a particular location and we said, if you choose to operate that type of business here, this is the sole place you're going to go, because if you, and John said it, you can't restrict them to extinction. You can restrict.
And the Attorney General, yeah.
Excuse me, John, let
Yep.
me be clear on this last point, Joe. So if the town does not vote to approve this, does not the planning board then have a responsibility to come up with a second recommendation?
But we wouldn't have, that would be in May, so they'd have between November and May.
Right.
Free reign.
The moratorium expires in November, so towns would be left vulnerable to let the moratoriums expire without a bylaw. That would be the ramifications
You'd
that I
have to have a
believe.
special election then. We've done that before.
Or a special meeting. Again, that would be better left to town council to explain the ramifications, but I believe Joe may be right, so.
Any other questions or comments? Marsha? Okay. Thank you, John. Appreciate you coming in. Okay, appointments tonight. Randy, no appointment.
Excuse me,
Yeah,
Mr.
sorry,
Chairperson.
yeah.
The planning board's going to need a vote from the selectmen.
Thank you for reminding
So
me.
I didn't know if you were waiting. To refer, and let me make this clear, this is simply a procedural
continue
thing
the
to refer it
process.
for a public
Yes.
hearing.
Yep.
Okay.
So moved to have this sent over to the planning board for public hearing.
That's second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Tom. Sorry about
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you twice.
Yeah. No appointments tonight, no public hearings. New business, before we go to the tag day request, I was informed by a town clerk that we have a vacancy on the board of registrars, and she requested that we post that vacancy and make it available for applicants. The caveat to that is, based on state law and state statute, it has to be a registered Republican, because the seat that was vacated was the Republican seat. And again, that's not this board's discretion or town's discretion, it's based on state law. What's the board's pleasure on that?
Second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
That is approved, and we have a tag day request in here from Chair Nation for November 29 and December 27th. Dates are available. What's the board's pleasure?
Move to accept.
Yep, second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
That is approved. Old business, Mr. Shivo.
None.
Mrs.
None,
Smith.
sir.
Town Administrator's Report, Mr. Buckner.
Couple of quick things. On the town council RFP, we had 8 responses for town council and 3 for associate town council. Fall town meeting, as we've said, we picked Tuesday, October 29th at 7 PM as the date. Articles are due from department heads tomorrow, and I'll be reviewing them with town council the day after, and I will have a draft warrant for the boards at the next meeting. And pre-town meeting, normally it's a week before, so October 22nd, 7 PM. Okay.
Fine.
Yep, yep.
Okay, thank you.
And Randy will meet 6:30 for a
6:30.
special meeting.
Okay.
And just, if we could emphasize through communication the 2 special meetings in consecutive weeks, so people know that we'll be meeting at a special time.
Okay.
Thank you, Randy.
Capital planning continues to meet. We're going to meet before the board's next meeting to prioritize requests, and the Finance Committee will also be meeting to review all money articles for recommendation. The North School RFPs proposals are due October 18th, and I do have a tour schedule if anybody shows up for interested parties on September 26th at 2 PM. On Verizon cable license application, the Cable Committee and our special counsel, Bill August, will be here on October 8th during the board's regular meeting for the public hearing on Verizon's request for a cable license. South Coast Rail, the Army Corps of Engineers has completed its final environmental impact report on the South Coast Rail project, and there's a copy at the library for viewing, and it also can be viewed or downloaded at the Army Corps' website. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Any questions for Randy? Okay. Selectmen's Report, Mr. Shivo. Mrs. Smith.
I'm good.
Okay, correspondence. We went over the memorandum. We have a request from town council for town meeting, a request to edit the section in our bylaws regarding posting of places for the town meeting warrant, and essentially the town clerk's office is requesting that Slips Capeway Marina and Gilmore Hall be removed and they be replaced with the middle school, and I think this is more so to recognize the changing dynamics in Town Hall, and also the fact that Gilmore Hall is really not open to the public anymore. And the other one would be that the warrant for the annual or special town meeting be on or before March 30th, and that it be done not less than 4 instead of 2 weeks before a meeting. What is the board's, well, actually, we don't need to vote on that yet, right, Randy?
No.
That's just our advisory. From Comcast notifying us that again, this year they're going to continue to provide our library and schools internet free of charge as part of the company's tradition of advancing fiber technology. And we thank Comcast for that. We have a letter of resignation to the board from Catherine Williams, our member to the Bristol Plymouth School Committee. Mrs. Williams is writing to inform us that she's resigning effective November 30th. As a result of personal issues and the potential of her residence being changed. She is thanking us for our support over the years and asking and hoping that we will continue to support the outstanding education at Bristol Plymouth. What is the board's pleasure?
To accept her resignation with regret. I mean, she has been there for 25 years and has done a marvelous job as such, so she will be missed.
Yes.
Echo that sentiment, second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The
Aye.
board's pleasure to post this. 1 week or 2 weeks to,
Any interested parties?
yes, for interested parties, and we also have, I requested town council's opinion on this. It would be the board's decision as to who the replacement is. I would suggest probably 2 weeks' notice for people, anybody interested to apply.
I would think that would be a good time,
Okay.
Joseph.
Is that
I would
okay with
move-
the
I
board?
would make a motion to that effect.
Yep, I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that is approved. Randy can post that. We have a letter of commendation / thanks to the highway department and to the board from a Roger McDonald, who is a resident in Raynham, and as I understand it from Superintendent Stolte, a expert on paving, congratulating us on the work that the town has done in terms of maintaining and repairing our roadways. His, I think, most notable comment is saying that the speed of our operation and the minimum inconvenience to the public is a huge plus, and that all involved deserve an attaboy award, including the boss, from Roger McDonald. And our final one is from Attorney Brennan, requesting warrant inclusion for our fall meeting for the acceptance of Carriage Hill Drive. Again, this is just a notice right now, and in a couple of weeks, we'll be voting on the final warrant. No other correspondence for us this evening. Press time, Mark, from the Gazette.
Just two quick questions. Don had mentioned the hearing with the planning board on October 17th.
Yeah.
Public hearing, would that be here at 7 PM, or do you know, or?
Should be probably posted already, but it will be here in this room. I'm not sure of the time.
Yeah, the planning board, Mark, posts all their meetings, but and they usually meet on Thursdays. I just don't know what time the meetings start.
Yeah, I just want to confirm I heard it right. The BP school committee member had resigned from that position?
Correct.
That's it.
All right, thank you. Any emergency business?
None.
None.
Mr. Chair.
Seeing no community nor citizen input, what is the board's pleasure?
Move to adjourn and pay the bills. No business after.
Second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.